Hey guys, what's up? How are you? My name is Rachel and I'm the proud founder of Siopa Seize Your Passion. And I'm here every Friday from our Facebook group, Seize Your Passion, sharing with you my lessons for the week, my thoughts for the week on my journey to become my best self and realize all my dreams, which is everything Seize Your Passion is about. And of course, at the core of it is the notion of passion and purpose and becoming the person that you were meant to be, that you were put on this earth to become your best you, right? None of us were put on this earth to become our worst selves. None of us were put on this earth to become our mediocre or average selves. And none of us were put on this earth to just float through life and not even think about what we're doing here and why we're here, and to feel alive and seize our passion in every moment and every day and continue to grow and evolve. Okay. So, I'm really excited for this week's topic. In case you can't tell, I'm a little more passionate than even usual for me. And that's because I was inspired to do the subject of this live stream. I have to give a shout out to the two people that inspired me to choose the topic that I'm talking about today, which is diversity of thought. So those two people are Juan Albello, who is the head of human capital management and education for SAP. For those of you who don't know what SAP is, it's an iconic corporation in the software industry. And the second person, really cool guy, by the way, Juan Albello, amazing guy. And the second person, just as amazing, if not even more so, is Louis Richardson, who is the chief storyteller for IBM Watson. Now, I was lucky enough to be inspired by these two gentlemen at yesterday's event. I am on the board of a nonprofit organization called IREM. They just started a local Florida community, and I'm on the board of the Florida local community as the director of edutainment. And we had our first kickoff event yesterday, which I helped put together. And it was so inspirational and so much fun. And the two highlights for me were the first one being that I got everyone there to do the chicken dance, which was so much fun. But the second one, of course, is this generation of ideas and this ideation and the conversation that we had during not only the keynote presentation, which was also amazing, all about virtual reality, but also during the panel, which both Juan and Louis were a part of this amazing panel. And they shared two ideas and two thoughts during the conversation that was going on in the panel, the Q&As, the questions, that really got me thinking and really inspired me to do this week's live stream on this notion of diversity of thought. Okay, so here's where I want to start. So I always say that, there's no real original ideas, right? That, we've heard it all before. And, you find one quote that has this universal truth. The message within it is something that's universally true, meaning it's been around, it's been said before, and you could probably find 10 other quotes saying the same message, just in a slightly different way, since the beginning of time, right? That's what a universal truth is. It means it's applicable to mankind all over and throughout time, right? So that is one of those universal truths that I always say. That in and of itself is a universal truth, right? That there are no original ideas, right? And there's different ways to say that and different ways to approach that. So I happened to stumble upon a quote this week, the same week that I was inspired to do this topic on diversity of thought by Mark Twain. And I want to start by reading it to you guys out loud. Okay, so there is no such thing as a new idea. It is impossible. We simply take a lot of old ideas and put them into a sort of mental kaleidoscope. We give them a turn and they make new and curious combinations. We keep on turning and making new combinations indefinitely, but they are the same old pieces of colored glass that have been in use through all the ages. So first of all, I love Mark Twain and I love his quotes, and this is actually the first time that I came across this particular quote by Mark Twain. And I love the analogy of putting old ideas into this analogy of a mental kaleidoscope, and then we twist and turn them around and we come up with new and curious combinations indefinitely, and that every new combination builds on the next, right? And that ties in, of course, to these two ideas that Juan and Lewis shared that inspired me to do the topic today of diversity of thought. So why? So first, let me tell you what those two thoughts are that they shared with me and how that ties into this universal truth and this quote that I just read to you from Mark Twain about the fact that there's no real new ideas, but it's kind of taking old ideas and putting them together and making new and curious combinations. So one of the ideas and thoughts that Lewis Richardson shared with us on the panel yesterday was this notion of when you listen to others, right? When you ask questions of others, or when others are speaking, or when others are telling their story, and this is applicable, by the way, in business and in your personal life, whether you're asking your kids questions and then you're listening to them, or you're asking your clients questions in business and listening to their answers, or you're, watching a movie or reading a book or reading an article about some idea, and you're listening to the story that's being told to you, right? When you listen to understand, as opposed to listening to reply, and that really hit home for me. Because, let me say that again, listening to understand rather than listening to reply. I think most of us, I know I am definitely guilty of this quite often, when we listen, we're automatically, as the other person is talking, whether they're responding to our question or telling us a story or telling us whatever they're sharing with us, as they're still talking and listening, we're thinking of how we're going to reply or what we're going to say next or what we think about what they're saying and how to reply to it, right? We're not listening truly to understand what they're saying, why they're saying it, their perspective, and taking it in and truly listening, right? And there's a huge difference there. And then, there's this other notion that Juan shared, right? When he was talking about diversity. And then, when we think of diversity, we think of racial diversity or, discrimination in the workplace, gender diversity, things like that. But we don't really think about the importance of diversity in thought, right? Meaning listening, when you listen to understand and not listen to reply, who are you listening to? The importance of listening to a diverse number of voices and having a diversity in how you're thinking about it. Those two things together, those two thoughts that Juan and Lewis shared yesterday inspired me to do this topic, because when you combine those two notions of listening to understand rather than listening to reply with the notion of having diversity of thought, both when you're talking and speaking and others are listening to you and you're telling your story, as well as when you're listening to others and they're telling you their story or they're responding to a question, that is the key to how you create the most curious and interesting and complex and original ideas that are based off of all those old ideas. So going back to Mark Twain's quote, right? There is no such thing as a new idea. It is impossible. We simply take a lot of old ideas and put them into a sort of mental kaleidoscope. Now, this is the key part, right? That ties into those two notions. We give them a turn and they make new and curious combinations. So how do we make those new and curious combinations original, right? If it's not a new idea, but you're building upon it, how do we add texture to it? How do we add substance to it? How do we add context to it? How do we add our own unique voice to it? It's by having diversity in thought, both when you're speaking as well as when you're listening, and it's learning how to listen to understand rather than listening to reply. Because when you listen to understand and you listen to other people's stories and you're telling your own story, that's how, it's understanding yourself, right? It's understanding each other, the person that you're speaking to or that you're listening to, and that's understanding culture. And that's what gives that kaleidoscope the new texture and the new and curious and interesting thoughts. And that is what ideation is, right? That notion of creating new original ideas. So there may not be new ideas on a one-dimensional level, right? But there are original ideas because of the textures and the layers and the perspectives that we add to them throughout time and with each other, right? And that is having a diversity of thought. And, you know, again, this applies to everyone in every situation, in every relationship that you have. And it definitely applies to seizing your passion, right? To going out there and uncovering your passion if you're not even sure what it is, right? It's follow your curiosity, right? That's a big part of it. It's being curious. It's being open-minded to listening to different voices, not just the role models that you admire, yes, them too, but the person, your waiter at the restaurant, he may say something that triggers a new texture or layer or a new thought in you, and you add to that. And that's what inspiration is, right? And that's ideation. And that's having diversity in thought. And that's how we create and build and create those new and complex and curious combinations that Mark Twain was talking about. That is original ideas and original thought versus new thoughts, right? There are no new thoughts or ideas. It's building upon those old ideas that are universal truths throughout time. It's building upon them by listening to understand, to listening to a diverse number of different voices and different perspectives and different schools of thoughts, right? If you continually just regurgitate back and forth to someone an idea that is one-dimensional and say the same thing over and over again, you're not growing, you're not learning, you're not creating new and curious combinations. And that's not ideation. And that's not how you're going to realize your dreams and uncover your passion and be inspired, you know? So, yeah. Haley Moore. I told everyone we did the chicken dance. Woohoo! So that's my my thoughts this week, and I just love that notion of diversity of thought and listening to understand rather than listening to reply. So yeah, hopefully you guys take that and, you know, let it marinate and listen to understand, and then you add your own new texture and perspective, and build upon that to create some new, original and curious and wonderful combination that is based on that fundamental universal truth, but adding to it, right? And that's what it's about, always evolving and growing and adding to texture and substance and getting to that next level in thought and in your actions. So that is all. Have an amazing weekend, everyone, and seize your passion. I'll see you next week. Ciao.